The Venu 2S on the surface may not look like a substantial upgrade from its predecessor or even the Vivo Active 4, but if we dive into the many improvements in its brand new interface and hardware sensors, we can really start to see how amazing this fitness tracker truly is. But there are two personal issues that I have with this kind of watch that makes it really hard for me to switch away from my current daily driver, which is the TicWatch Pro 3. In this video, we'll go over the main upgrades from the previous generation and find out if it can replace my current Wear OS watch. First, let's talk about the design. It looks very similar to the previous Venu and Vivo Active 4, but there are some subtle differences. As usual, as you might have seen in my previous Garmin watch reviews, I always get the smaller or sportier version no matter what. Viewers like to comment that it looks too small on me or it looks too feminine for my wrists, but honestly, I much rather sacrifice screen real estate and a more premium type of look for something that is lighter and, most importantly, smaller. You see, in order to get the full continuous benefit of tracking for metrics like body battery, stress level, sleep score, it's crucial that I wear this watch 24/7, even when I'm sleeping, exercising in extreme heat, or simply just relaxing on the couch. If I have to remove this watch because it's too bulky or too annoying to sleep, it pretty much defeats the whole purpose of owning a fitness tracker in the first place. Let me just say, the Venu 2S is one of the sleekest, sexiest fitness trackers I've ever owned. It's amazing how thin and lightweight it is. The new strap has a very nice kind of gray look to it. It's super comfortable to wear all day, and I never developed any rashes or skin irritation. My only gripe with the design is that some skin gunk still gets stuck into the sensor area. I really wish Garmin would fix this, as it has been plaguing their previous watches, and it's a source of concern for bacterial buildup, which is why I always clean my watch after a sweaty workout. So speaking of sensors, this is one of the biggest areas improvements for the Venu 2S, and that obviously has to do with the new hardware sensor. So if you make note of how it looks kind of different from the previous generation in terms of the sensor arrangement, it's very interesting. This is one of the main reasons why I wanted to upgrade in the first place, and I have to say the improvements did not disappoint. I've noticed that there was a big improvement in heart tracking, pulse ox tracking, and pulse ox, by the way, is Garmin's way of detecting blood oxygen saturation percentage. We're going to talk more about that later in the sleep tracking section. I also want to quickly mention that not all the improvements are exclusive to the hardware. There's also a lot of improvements obviously in the software, and most specifically the algorithms for detecting your sleep and of course your heart rate. We'll talk about that later in the video. For the next biggest and most obvious upgrade, it's going to be in the overall user interface, menus, and of course the widgets. The way you interact with widgets has improved a lot by providing more upfront information as you swipe up or down to see data like weather, notifications, sleep tracking, which is something that I'm very excited about, and of course calendar events. I definitely welcome this new change, as in my opinion, it really improves glanceability on this specific watch. From the Vivo Active 4, nothing really else has changed in terms of the menu interactions. For example, if you swipe to the right, you're going to get your usual customizable quick action like Garmin Pay or music controls. And let's say during an activity like a strength training exercise, you can multitask, so you can swipe left or right, and so you can go between the main operating system, or you can go to your current activity that you're engaged with. As usual, if you long press the top button, you can get access to a list of customizable actions. Single tapping that button also gives you access to activities and custom apps that you can download from the Garmin Connect app. By the way, if you want to learn about my top 5 favorite Garmin apps, I made a whole video dedicated to that. And honestly, there's not too many apps out there, but definitely check it out. So in the spirit of Garmin, I thought I would take some of this video outside, because this is, after all, a fitness tracker for people who are outdoorsy and really big into fitness. So anyways, the next thing I want to talk about, and this is a very important topic, is all about the new and improved sleep tracking. Now, sleep tracking has been greatly improved, and I've compared this to many other sleep devices, as you can see here, such as the Better Sleep Tuner, the Loki Ring Sleep Monitor, and this is more geared towards the pulse ox or blood oxygen saturation, which I'll talk in the next section, which is also very important. Now, Garmin has indicated they have used new sleep tracking algorithms provided by a third-party company, and this has really improved their overall sleep kind of metrics, and has given us a new sleep metric, which is sleep score, which is something that I'm very happy about it. Most notably with sleep tracking is that you can finally access all the metrics right on your wrist on the watch interface. So with the new glance kind of menu, you can see your sleep score, you can sleep everything, all the information, all on your watch. And this has been very, very welcomed, especially because in previous Garmin watches, I felt like this was always lacking. Not having to go into the Garmin Connect app on your phone, which was kind of an annoying process because I had to load all the data all the time. And just being able to see it on your watch has really improved my quality of life and has made the watch just a lot more fun to use overall. Now, I compared the new sleep tracking algorithms to some of the other devices, and I found that yes, overall there has been an improvement. I've noticed that the start and stop time has been more accurate, and obviously it still doesn't track napping, which is unfortunate, but at least we have a lot better data to kind of work off with. Now, if you're serious like me about sleep tracking and you're really into the data, I think what's really nice about Garmin, as I mentioned in previous videos, is that they include the Connect app experience also on your desktop. So you can log into your Chrome browser, log into your Connect app account, and then from there you can see kind of line by line all the graphs, all for your sleeping metrics. They don't hold back the data. You can actually seek through the timeline of a graph, let's say your sleep graph, and you can see at the very minute, at the very second, what your sleep stage was, what is your respiration rate, what your pulse ox was. All that information on the X and Y axis is available, and it's very fine-grained and very well detailed. So for the next section, I want to talk about a topic that is very important to me, and that's the pulse ox feature on Garmin watches. Now, there has been major improvements to the pulse ox. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but you might be wondering, why is pulse ox so important? Well, for people who don't know what pulse ox is, it's basically Garmin's fancy word or proprietary word for tracking the blood oxygen saturation percentage in your body at the given current time. Now, what's really cool about this is that you can do a spot check, which is nice if you're going on a mountain and you want to spot check your pulse ox at that point. But most importantly, in order to save battery, you can define a start and end time of when you typically fall asleep and wake up. And this will activate the pulse ox only during that time. And then this gives you a very battery efficient way of using a very powerful LED sensor to kind of measure your blood oxygen saturation throughout the night. Now, personally for myself, I have sleep apnea, and it's a condition where you kind of just randomly stop breathing every so often, and that causes my blood oxygen saturation to go down, obviously when I'm not breathing. Now, sleep apnea is not a condition that everyone has, but it's something that is becoming more prevalent, and I'm not sure why that's the case. It's just becoming more popular in terms of people being more aware of it, perhaps. But if you suspect that you have, snoring, your partner's telling that you're snoring a lot, or you have gasping for air, the pulse ox feature may actually be something of high benefit to you. Now, let's talk about accuracy, because this is a very contentious issue, and it has been a big problem in previous Garmin watches, even in the recent Vivo Active 4S. Now, I'm very happy to report that the new pulse ox tracking ability on the Venu 2 has been greatly improved. The percentage values of my blood oxygen saturation is more in line with some of the other trackers I've been using, such as the Loki Ring Sleep Monitor and the Better Sleep Tuner. So in my past video reviews of Garmin watches and fitness trackers that have the pulse ox feature, I noticed that the overall reading was always lower. I was like always getting below 90%. And recently with the new Venu, and I'm not sure if it's due to the hardware or software calibration or like they've made some modifications, but I've noticed that it has become a lot more reasonable, above 95% most of the time. Now, every time there's a significant drop, I kind of notice that this is more coming from the fact that I'm moving around. Let's say I'm waking up to go use the washroom in the middle of the night. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do you know this? Well, I've been using a Wisecam to kind of monitor my sleep and kind of monitor my sleep apnea. So I have audio visual cues on top of all the data from all the sensors that I've been using at the same time. So to answer the question, is the pulse ox more accurate? Well, I have to say it's better, but it's not perfect at all. Unfortunately, there's some weird dips, and sometimes the actual pulse ox reading is it changes a lot. You can see there's a lot of zigzag patterns. It's going really high, then going really low. And the times where I do wake up and go to the washroom, I notice that it drops a lot. And that is probably due to the placement of where the watch is and the ambient light and all these things that can really affect the reading of the pulse ox. Another thing that could affect the reading of the pulse ox is by simply sleeping on the side of your watch and kind of restricting the blood flow. That could just be a false positive if it thinks you're having a low percentage, for example. So some of the YouTubers that got the Venu 2 for free, they noticed that the actual sensor on the watch is arranged differently. And I did notice this too, but strangely enough, every time I'm taking a pulse ox reading, I only see that the two main sensors on the back, as you can see in this video over here, there's only two being flashed right now, and it's flashing red. That means it's using the pulse ox sensor. They're being activated, but I never see the other ones, the four circular ones in a kind of a four pattern. They're never being turned on. So if anyone in the comment section knows how this hardware works, why it's arranged differently from the previous versions of the Vivo Active 4S, please let me know in the comment section down below. I suspect those are there to help with the pulse ox accuracy. So moving on to one of the most unique features and probably one of the best features of Garmin watches is its strength training activity. Now, unfortunately, with the new recent Wear OS updates, the strength training activity, which was almost competing with the Garmin strength training activity, has vanished. So Wear OS users have lost a very important feature,
And what is this strength training activity, you might be wondering? Well, it's the ability to go into the gym and start with, weightlifting, picking up weights and stuff like that, but being able to automatically track your reps and your sets. So not only is this feature helpful for tracking historical metrics of your weightlifting regimen, it's very helpful personally for myself and maybe for you as well, is the ability to stay focused in the gym. Now, one thing we all get distracted with our smartphones, we kind of just spend a lot of time in between our sets. Let's say you did like 5 chest presses, you put your weights down and then you kind of just walk around the gym, or obviously we're stay at home order, so maybe in your house, in your home gym. One thing I really like about this feature on the Garmin, the strength training activity, is the ability to see your rest time in between sets. And sometimes you'll look at your watch and you'll see that your rest time is beyond 3 minutes. And we're like, oh wow, I've took 3 minutes between a set, I should really stay focused. This is one of the main reasons why. Not only is it for tracking historical reasons and your progress and whatnot, it's more like a coach that kind of helps you stay focused on your weightlifting regimen. So with the value proposition proposed by the strength training activity in mind, I kind of want to talk about, has there been an improvement? And I've criticized Garmin in the past with the strength training activity in terms of tracking the type of movements. Let's say you're doing a chest press and then it detects like a shoulder press instead, or vice versa, and maybe miscounting your reps. Now I have to say, it feels like it has improved from the previous Vivo Active 4S. I've noticed that it's able to track at least the type of exercise. So if I'm doing some shoulder exercise, it will at least detect that it's within that shoulder region. I've still had some hiccups where I was doing a shoulder press, but it detected a bench press, which is unfortunate, but I feel like it's a lot more accurate.
One big update in the Connect app that I find really useful for keeping track of my weightlifting records is the new diagram that shows which muscle groups you targeted during your workout. As I had explained earlier, Garmin's exercise type detection is not perfect, but it does a really good job at approximating your muscle groups that you worked on previously, which can be very helpful if you would say, for example, forgot what muscle group you worked on in your last session. So another amazing feature that is exclusive to Garmin fitness trackers is the auto set feature. This feature basically makes your weightlifting workouts more seamless by not forcing you to have to constantly press the bottom right button to start and stop your reps. Here you can see I'm doing some deadlifts, and the Venu 2S is smart enough to know when I have repeated a motion and when I have stopped that motion. This makes your strength training metrics like rest time and time during sets extremely accurate to the second. I think this is going to be a really nifty feature, especially if you're going back to public gyms and would prefer to not have to touch your watch during an entire workout. Now, its accuracy is not perfect, but this is probably one of the best implementations thus far, and it's on the Venu 2S. Historically in the past, I've had some previous models of Garmin watches that had a hard time recognizing when an exercise should have been started, and when sometimes I'm just walking casually around the gym and drinking some water, it would just randomly start tracking my exercise. I find these errors happen less on the Venu 2S. This feature is not enabled by default, so you'll need to turn it on.
Now, some other minor additions to the strength training activity is that you can customize a specific type of workout. And let's say you want to make a chest day and you have all these different types of chest exercises. So you can just plan it all on your phone, transfer it over to your watch, and then you'll have even animation showing you the type of exercise. So it shows you how to do a chest press. Now, if you're at the point of customizing your own type of regiment, weightlifting regiment, you probably don't need these animations. So first of all, I never use this feature. I don't think it's very dynamic, because let's say you go to the gym or you're in your home gym, maybe you don't want to do this regiment specifically, like maybe you don't want to do this type of exercise. So I find that this is a little restrictive, and I much prefer to use the auto set feature and just do any type of exercise I feel like doing at the time of day. But for someone who is very scheduled and very kind of detail oriented, this might be a really cool feature for you. So for the next section, I'm going to talk about Garmin Music. And this is something that is very heavily advertised and something that you pay a lot of money for, because it is a very advanced feature that requires Wi-Fi and integration with music providers. Now, personally for me, I always have my phone on me, so I don't use the music feature. I kind of wish I could opt out of the music feature, but unfortunately I just have to get it. I have to pay extra for it, whatever. Now, the one thing I do like about the music feature is that you can control your smartphone's music. So let's say you're playing all the music from your smartphone, and maybe you're watching a YouTube video or just playing some music. Being able to remote control the music on your phone from your wrist is a very nifty feature. Now, being able to switch between music providers. Now, there are 3 types of music providers. One, obviously, is the remote control on your native phone. The second is onboard music or onboard podcast that is on your watch that you transfer from Windows or Mac. And then the last one is any type of music provider, say Deezer or Spotify or Amazon Music. Now, unfortunately for people like myself that are in Canada or do not have a Spotify Premium or Deezer Premium subscription, it's going to be very limited to use a music provider. I've tried using Amazon and it's very limited. At least it does work. with Spotify and Deezer, you need to have a paid subscription, which is really unfortunate. So I just pretty much don't use this feature at all because I don't want to pay more money to another company to listen to music where I can just listen to it on my phone. So one thing I did was I configured my swipe right shortcut on the main menu of the Garmin watch to show the music widget. And I really like this because I can quickly access my widgets. And if I want to switch between providers, let's say I want to switch between onboard music to controlling my smartphone, I can just long press the bottom button and then switch between different music providers. So I have to say it's a well thought out design, especially if you use different music providers. Now, personally for me, I use the onboard music. I do find it kind of strange that in 2021, we still have to load music from our PC or Mac. It's kind of annoying to plug it into the USB and then copy a file. And it's very hard to find podcasts and music that is in the MP3 format. It's typically not legal, but I do it through legal methods, and it's just, you have to go through a lot of hoops and ladders. You have to download different programs and then extract the MP3 and whatnot just to get a podcast. But overall, I do find it quite convenient, the fact that I don't have to bring my phone. I can just bring my little Bluetooth headphones, put them on me, connect it to my watch, and then just continue a podcast. And what's really nice is that it does continue where you left off. So if you're listening to a 1 hour long podcast and you paused it at 20 minutes and then you come back later on your next run, it'll continue from where you left off. So that is a very handy feature. So let's talk about NFC payments or Garmin Pay. Now, unfortunately, in Canada, there are very limited financial institutions that do support Garmin Pay. It is kind of like a niche thing. Now, thankfully, I've signed up with Brim Financial, which is a credit card company, which gives you a lot of points for Amazon and whatnot. So I'll put a link in the description to my referral link. It really helps me out if you do use it. But I do find like this is the kind of only good provider for people who are in Canada that want to use Garmin Pay. Now, do I use Garmin Pay all the time? Well, to be honest, I don't. I don't even use it on my Wear OS watch. And the reason why is that it's kind of a hassle, especially if I don't want to touch my watch. Let's say I'm in a grocery store and my hands are dirty. It's just kind of annoying to kind of have to put this near a terminal and stuff like that.
The real annoyance stems from having to enter a PIN passcode every time you want to use Garmin Pay. For me, it's too much of a hassle, especially if I'm at the cashier.
Now, the good thing about Garmin Pay is that the NFC field, or kind of the power, the strength of it, is quite strong, especially compared to Wear OS. So what this means is that you don't have to put the watch super close to the terminal where everyone touches just to get a reading. You can just put it maybe a couple inches away and it picks it up really fast. But I can see this being very useful if you're going to be going on a run. Let's say you're jogging and you don't want to carry your phone or your wallet, and maybe perhaps you just want to buy a random snack at the convenience store. Being able to take out your Garmin Pay is convenient in that special niche scenario. Now, speaking of running, I have to say the GPS tracking when you're walking, running, biking, and all that stuff is superbly accurate. I'm very impressed. It only takes less than 60 seconds for it to lock onto a signal, and I've had no issues with the GPS tracking, even in a downtown environment where there are lots of tall buildings. The only caveat to this is that if you rely on the auto detection activity, so let's say you walk for 10 minutes, it automatically detects that you started that workout. It will not track the 10 minutes you did prior leading up to the auto detection event, obviously because it would have to know ahead of time to turn on GPS, which would obviously drain the battery. So if you want to get full GPS tracking, make sure you just go into the activity, tap the top right button, and start your activity, let's say running, right away, so that you get your GPS started from the beginning. Now, there are so many advanced metrics for people who are serious runners. I really do think that you should take a look into it, but personally for myself, I don't run as much. I'm not like using this so much for tracking my running. So there are definitely other YouTube videos that cover this in more detail. Now, before we get into the final section of this video, I just want to mention something very important about this Garmin watch. There are so many features, metrics, all these types of things that come with a Garmin watch that it's very hard to cover in a short video like this. Now, I've covered a lot of this, such as the best-in-class notifications, especially for Android users, how you interact with them and whatnot. Also, metrics like body battery, stress levels. That's more covered in my Vivo Active full in-depth review. So if you haven't watched that, I definitely recommend checking that out. It's over 40 minutes long. Don't worry, it has chapter links if you're kind of interested in a specific feature. So I'll put a link in the description to that video if you want to learn more about the Garmin watch. Now, without further ado, let's talk about the two items I mentioned earlier that kind of really prevent me from fully liking this watch and kind of recommending it for everyone. Now, I think that this watch is well suited for a certain type of person, but let me explain what the two items are lacking in this Garmin watch. So the first item is the lack of always on display. Now, you might be wondering, oh, you can just turn on the always on display through the settings. Yeah, and yes, you can do that. You just have to go into the settings, change the timeout to always on. Now, the issue of that is if you are using Now, the issue with the implementation of the always-on display, or particularly this particular watch, is that the Venu 2S is not using a transreflective display. It's not an always-on watch. It's using an AMOLED display, which is obviously vibrant, has amazing colors, looks very nice, rich blacks, good contrast. But the issue is mainly around the do not disturb setting. So I set up my do not disturb or my sleep time from, let's say, 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. Let's say that's my sleep schedule. But obviously there are days where you stay a little bit later or you wake up a little bit earlier. And if you want to check your watch, it's completely off. It does not show, despite it being always on display, enabled. So you just basically get a blank screen. With other watches like my TicWatch Pro 3 that has an always on display, or even my VivoActive 4S, you could always see the display. So I kind of really miss this feature of this watch, and I really wish they would just kind of make a VivoActive 5 or a second version that had the same software implementation, all the new sensors, but just had a transreflective display that was memory in pixel so that we have that low-powered, always-on display.
On a positive note, the bright AMOLED display has plenty of beautiful watch face customizations. What's even better is that you can even customize up to 4 widgets or complications on the watch face to give you useful information like step count, date, and the weather. However, a critique to this is that you still cannot interact with these widgets. For example, in Wear OS, you can simply tap the calendar widget and it'll take you automatically to the calendar app, whereas with Garmin, nothing happens if you tap the calendar widget. I'm really hoping Garmin implements this simple software feature that I believe would deliver a much better user experience. Now, with such a bright, beautiful AMOLED display, do you think that the battery would be severely impacted by the always-on display and the Pulse Ox sleep tracking? Well, surprisingly, based on my reports, the battery performance is quite good, much better than Wear OS, but still not as good as VivoActive 4S. I was able to last around 3 nights of sleep tracking with Pulse Ox, or about 4 days of use. The second item that makes it really hard for me to transition from my Wear OS smartwatch to the Garmin Fitness Tracker is the lack of voice input and a voice assistant. You see, on a Garmin device, it's really difficult or in some cases impossible to do certain tasks like quickly setting alarms reminders, replying to text messages, or just asking for store hours for the nearby grocery store with my voice. I also miss some of the native apps like Google Maps turn-by-turn navigation and Google Keep. Now yes, there are alternative apps that help fill this software gap, but I much prefer the native clean experience from Google. Of course, this is a matter of personal preference, but I truly think that the only thing that is really holding back Garmin from the likes of Google and Apple is their lack of voice input and the voice assistant. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the speaker output is also quite handy and it's something that is also lacking. I use it quite a lot for taking quick phone calls or just improving the accessibility for those who prefer to hear, let's say, the weather status rather than staring at a small screen that could be hard to see in the bright sunlight.
So for the end of this video, I want to answer the question, who is this Venu 2S for? Well, the answer to that question might be really obvious. If you're really big into fitness and you care about constant 24/7 continuous tracking, I really think that the Garmin or even a Fitbit would be the best choice for you. However, if you're someone more like me that really cares about kind of a smartwatch experience, and for example, I mean like having really detailed notifications, being able to interact with the Google ecosystem, more specifically the voice assistant, then in that case, I think a Wear OS watch is going to be the more compelling option. And now with the new update with Wear OS and Samsung coming out together to kind of bring the new Wear OS 3.0 platform, it's going to be very hard for us consumers to make that decision. In the end, it all really depends on your values. I'd be very curious to know, so please let me know in the comment section what would you probably want to choose. Are you going to get the Garmin watch, or maybe you're going to wait for something new coming from the Wear OS and the Samsung team? I'd be very curious to know. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the Venu 2. If this video helped you in any way, please do give a like. It really helps to support this channel. And also consider subscribing if you want to see my new video whenever the new Wear OS Samsung watch comes out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.